I'm Zephyra Blackwood, 34, and I just sent a crisp $1 bill to my parents with a note that read, "All I can afford." The look on my brother Camden's face when he realized my contribution to his lavish graduation party would barely buy him a stick of gum was priceless. What my family doesn't realize is that this wasn't just about money, it was about 7 years of favoritism, lies, and the day they all chose to skip my son's birthday party, but now expected me to shell out thousands for Camden's celebration. Sometimes family loyalty is just a facade that crumbles when you need it most. Hey everyone, before I dive into this wild family drama, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If you enjoy family revenge stories like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how karma finally caught up with my family after years of their toxic behavior. Growing up in the affluent suburbs of Boston, it was always clear who the favorite child was in the Blackwood household. My brother Camden, 2 years my junior, could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. While I struggled to get acknowledgement for straight A's, Camden was celebrated for simply passing his classes. My parents, Eleanor and Richard Blackwood, both successful attorneys, had created a narrative where Camden was destined for greatness while I was just there. Zephyra, why can't you be more like your brother, became the unofficial family motto. Camden played lacrosse, badly I might add, but my parents never missed a game. Meanwhile, when I made it to state finals in debate, they were too busy with work to attend. These small rejections accumulated over the years, creating invisible wounds that never quite healed. When I announced my acceptance to Columbia University for journalism, my father's response was, "That's nice, but did you hear Camden might try out for the high school varsity team next year?" My accomplishments were footnotes in the grand story of Camden's mediocrity. The family dynamic shifted even further when I met Ethan during my sophomore year of college. He was studying architecture with ambitious dreams and a kind heart that immediately drew me to him. After dating for 3 years, I became pregnant with our son Oliver. We weren't planning on having a child so young, but we embraced the challenge with love and determination. My parents, however, were less than thrilled. "You're throwing away your future," my mother declared when I told them I was pregnant. "What will people think?" My father couldn't even look me in the eye. They didn't attend our small wedding ceremony, sending instead a card that read, "Hope you know what you're doing." Camden, following the family tradition of disappointment in me, didn't show up either. He claimed he had an important party that weekend. The pattern was established early. My life events were optional, inconvenient intrusions on their schedules. When Oliver was born, my parents visited exactly once, staying for precisely 45 minutes before my mother checked her watch and announced they needed to leave for Camden's college orientation weekend. They held Oliver awkwardly as if he were some strange artifact rather than their grandson, and took no photos. My mother didn't even offer to help with anything despite my obvious exhaustion after a 26-hour labor. "We've already done the baby thing," she said dismissively. "You'll figure it out." The contrast between their treatment of me and Camden became even more glaring as years passed. Camden dropped out of college twice, switching majors 4 times, yet my parents supported him financially and emotionally through every finding himself phase. When he decided to backpack through Europe for a year, instead of attending classes, my parents funded the entire trip, calling it an educational experience. Meanwhile, when Ethan and I struggled to make rent after he lost his job during an economic downturn, my request for a temporary loan was met with, "You made adult choices, now live with adult consequences." I learned to stop expecting fairness. I built my own support system of friends who became our chosen family. Oliver grew into a bright, curious child who thankfully had Ethan's parents as loving grandparents on his father's side. They showed up to every school play, soccer game, and birthday celebration, filling the void left by my parents' indifference. As the years passed, I established myself as a respected freelance journalist specializing in human interest stories. The irony wasn't lost on me that I spent my career giving voice to other stories while mine remained unacknowledged by my own family. Ethan's architectural firm gained recognition, and we eventually bought a modest but comfortable home in Connecticut. My relationship with my parents and Camden evolved into obligatory holiday phone calls and occasional tense dinners when they happened to be in town. I maintained these minimal connections more out of societal expectation than genuine desire. Each interaction left me emotionally drained, as Camden inevitably dominated the conversation with tales of his latest endeavors, while my parents hung on his every word. "Camden's thinking about law school now," my mother would announce proudly, despite his undergraduate GPA making that virtually impossible. Or "Camden just met the daughter of your father's golf buddy, she's from such a good family." I learned to nod and smile to ask the appropriate questions about Camden's life, while receiving none about mine or Oliver's in return. I became an expert at changing subjects when conversations veered toward uncomfortable comparisons. I protected Oliver from understanding the full extent of his maternal grandparents' indifference, making excuses for their absences at his events. "Grandma and Grandpa are very busy with work," I would tell him, the lie becoming easier with repetition. But children are perceptive, and as Oliver grew older, he began to notice the asymmetry in attention between himself and his Uncle Camden. "Why does Uncle Camden get so many presents from Grandma and Grandpa?" he asked once after Christmas, his 7-year-old face scrunched in genuine confusion. How do you explain toxic family dynamics to a child without poisoning their perspective? I chose my words carefully. "Different people show love in different ways," I said, knowing it was an insufficient explanation for such calculated inequality. The stage was set for what would become the breaking point in our already fragile family relationship. A series of events that would force me to finally acknowledge and act on the painful truth I had been avoiding for years. In the story of the Blackwood family, Camden would always be the protagonist, and Oliver and I would forever be relegated to supporting roles at best, or forgotten entirely at worst. Oliver's 8th birthday fell on a perfect Saturday in May. For months he had been dreaming about his space explorer-themed party. As a child fascinated by astronomy, he wanted nothing more than to share his passion with friends and family. Ethan and I spent weeks planning the celebration, transforming our backyard into a miniature solar system with planet decorations, a rocket ship, bounce house, and star-shaped foods. "Do you think Grandma and Grandpa will come this time?" Oliver asked as we hung silver streamers. The hope in his voice broke my heart. Despite years of disappointments, he still yearned for his grandparents' approval and attention. "I invited them, sweetie. They said they'd try," I answered carefully. In truth, my mother had responded to the invitation with unexpected enthusiasm. "We wouldn't miss it," she had assured me, over the phone, sounding more engaged than I could remember in years. For once, I allowed myself to hope. Perhaps they had finally recognized the importance of being present in Oliver's life. I even reserved their favorite cake, carrot with cream cheese frosting, alongside Oliver's chocolate space cake. The day of the party arrived with perfect weather. 15 of Oliver's friends showed up, along with Ethan's parents, who had driven 3 hours to be there. Oliver wore the astronaut costume we'd found at a specialty shop, his face beaming with excitement as he greeted each guest. 2 hours into the party, my parents and Camden still hadn't arrived. No calls, no texts explaining their absence. I checked my phone repeatedly, anxiety building as Oliver kept glancing toward the driveway. "When are Grandma and Grandpa coming?" he asked every 30 minutes or so, his excitement dimming each time. "Traffic might be bad," I lied, sending another unanswered text to my mother. By the time we sang Happy Birthday and Oliver blew out his candles, it was clear they weren't coming. I watched my son make a wish, his eyes closed tight, and wondered if he was wishing for his grandparents to appear. The thought made my chest ache. After the party, when the last guest had gone home, and Oliver had finally fallen asleep surrounded by new toys, I tried calling my parents again. My mother answered on the fourth ring. "Oh, Zafira, I'm sorry we couldn't make it," she said, not sounding sorry at all. Music and laughter echoed in the background. Camden had an interview for an internship, and we had to take him shopping for a suit. Then his friends invited us all for dinner to celebrate. "You promised Oliver you'd be here," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "He kept looking for you all day." "Don't be so dramatic. It's just a birthday party. He'll have another one next year." Her dismissive tone felt like a slap. Camden's interview was important for his future. "You understand priorities, don't you?" I hung up without responding, too angry to trust my words. Later that night, scrolling through social media to distract myself, I found the real reason for their absence. My mother had posted photos from Camden's job interview celebration at an exclusive restaurant, time-stamped 3 hours before Oliver's party was scheduled to begin. There was no interview. They had chosen Camden's impromptu celebration over a commitment made to their grandson months in advance. The following morning, I discovered something even more hurtful. My father had checked in on social media at a golf course near our home, just 15 minutes away from our house during Oliver's party. They had been in the area but chose not to stop by, not even for a few minutes. When Oliver came downstairs for breakfast, still wearing his astronaut pajamas, he asked in a small voice, "Did Grandma and Grandpa forget about my birthday?" "No, sweetie, they didn't forget," I said, sitting beside him. "They just couldn't make it." "They never come to my stuff," he observed with the brutal honesty of an 8-year-old. "Is it because they don't like me?" I pulled him close, anger and heartbreak competing in my chest. "No, Oliver. This is not about you. Some grown-ups just don't know how to be good grandparents. But you have Grandma and Grandpa Wilson who love you very much, and you have me and Dad who think you're the most amazing kid in the entire universe." He nodded against my shoulder, but I felt his disappointment like a physical weight. That night, after Oliver was asleep, Ethan found me crying at the kitchen table. He sat beside me and took my hand. "I've stayed quiet about your family for years, because they're your family," he said gently. "But Zeph, they're hurting Oliver now, not just you. At what point do we protect him from getting his hopes up?" "I thought they would change when they saw what an incredible kid he is," I admitted. "I thought grandparenting would be different somehow." "People don't fundamentally change," Ethan replied. "Your parents have shown us who they are consistently for years. Maybe it's time we believe them." The next day, I made a difficult decision. I wouldn't cut my family off completely, but I would significantly reduce contact and, more importantly, stop creating expectations for Oliver that his maternal grandparents would repeatedly fail to meet. No more invitations to his events, no more holidays spent anxiously wondering if they would show up, no more explaining their absences to a confused child. It was liberating in a sad way. Over the next few months, I noticed Oliver seemed happier without the constant disappointment cycle. We focused on nurturing relationships with people who genuinely cared about him. I stopped checking my parents' social media, tired of seeing lavish outings with Camden that they would never consider including us in. The rift widened naturally without my effort. My mother called occasionally, usually to talk about Camden's latest achievements, but rarely asked about Oliver. When she did, it was superficial, asking his age or grade as if he were a distant acquaintance's child rather than her grandson. For my part, I stopped sharing details of our lives. When asked generic questions about Oliver, I gave equally generic answers. "He's fine," I would say, not mentioning his science fair win or his first home run in Little League. Those precious moments belonged to people who had earned the right to celebrate them. 6 months after Oliver's birthday party, I received a formal-looking envelope in the mail. Inside was an invitation to Camden's law school graduation ceremony and reception. I stared at the thick cardstock with its embossed lettering, thinking of the birthday invitations Oliver had carefully written out by hand, the ones my family had ignored. What I didn't know then was that this invitation wasn't just a social formality, it was the catalyst for a confrontation that had been brewing for years, one that would finally force me to stand up, not just for myself, but for my son. 3 weeks after receiving Camden's graduation invitation, I was sorting through the mail when I found another envelope from my parents. Inside was not a letter, but an invoice professionally printed as if from their law firm detailing my expected contribution to Camden's graduation celebration. The total $200. I stared at the itemized list in disbelief. Venue rental share $800, catering contribution $650, gift pool for Camden's law school graduation gift, Rolex watch $500, professional photographer $250. At the bottom, my mother had written a personal note, "As family, we expect everyone to contribute their fair share to celebrate Camden's achievement. Please send payment by the 15th to ensure the venue booking is confirmed. This is non-negotiable. Non-negotiable." As if I had any say in planning this extravagant celebration. As if I had been consulted about a $500 contribution toward a Rolex watch for a brother who couldn't remember my son's birthday. I called my mother immediately. When she answered, her tone was businesslike, as if she had been expecting my call. "Hello, Zephra. I assume you received the contribution details for Camden's graduation party." "Mom, you can't seriously expect me to pay $200 for a party I wasn't even consulted about," I said, still staring at the invoice. "That's more than our mortgage payment." "Well, if you had become a lawyer like your father and I suggested, instead of pursuing that journalism hobby, you wouldn't be worrying about mortgage payments," she replied dismissively. "Everyone in the family is contributing. Camden deserves the best for his achievement." "Everyone? Who exactly is everyone?" I asked. "Because as far as I know, Camden and I are your only children, and you're certainly not charging yourselves. Your father's siblings, my sister, and all the cousins," she said. "It's a family effort to celebrate Camden's success. He's the first grandchild to complete an advanced degree." I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "Mom, do you remember Oliver's birthday party last May? The one you and Dad promised to attend but didn't show up for?" There was a pause. "We had a conflict that day. Camden had that important interview." "There was no interview, Mom. I saw the social media posts. You all went out to celebrate nothing in particular, and Dad was actually golfing 15 minutes from our house during Oliver's party." Another longer pause. "Well, that's in the past now. This is about Camden's graduation, a significant milestone." "And my son's 8th birthday wasn't a milestone. He waited all day for grandparents who never showed up, who never even called." "Children have birthdays every year, Zephra. A law school graduation happens once in a lifetime." Her words hit me like a physical blow. In that moment, I understood with perfect clarity that nothing would ever change. My son would always be an afterthought to them, his milestones insignificant compared to whatever Camden happened to be doing. "I need to go now," I said quietly. "I'll think about the invoice." "Don't think too long," my mother replied. "The deadline is firm and Camden is counting on your support." After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table, the invoice before me, a decade of similar slights and dismissals running through my mind. I thought about Oliver's face when he realized his grandparents weren't coming to his party. I thought about the countless times my parents had chosen Camden over me, and now over my son. That evening, I showed the invoice to Ethan. His reaction was immediate and uncharacteristically blunt. "You're not seriously considering paying this, are you?" he asked, scanning the document with growing indignation. "After everything they've done or haven't done, I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to just pay it to avoid the drama. Another part wants to tell them exactly where they can put their invoice." Ethan sat beside me, taking my hand. Zeph, I've watched for years as your family has treated you and Oliver as afterthoughts. I've stayed quiet because they're your family and it's your relationship to manage. But this, he tapped the invoice, this is beyond disrespectful. This is them explicitly stating that Camden's celebration is worth thousands of dollars of our money, but Oliver's birthday wasn't worth 2 hours of their time. He was right, of course. But years of conditioning to keep the peace, to be the reasonable one, to not rock the boat, made it difficult to contemplate direct confrontation. What would you do? I asked him. Honestly, I'd send them exactly what they deserve, nothing. Or maybe a penny, just so they know it was a deliberate choice. He squeezed my hand. But this isn't my battle. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. Over the next few days, I wrestled with my response. I drafted angry emails I never sent, composed scathing texts I deleted. I considered simply ignoring the invoice, but knew that would only result in persistent calls from my mother. Then one evening, while helping Oliver with his homework, I had a moment of clarity. He was working on a creative writing assignment, crafting a story about standing up to a playground bully. The most important thing, he explained seriously, is that you have to show the bully that their actions have consequences. My teacher says that's the only way they learn. Out of the mouths of babes. I realized then that by constantly accommodating my family's behavior, by making excuses for them to Oliver, by sending gifts to Camden's celebrations while receiving nothing in return, I was teaching my son that it was acceptable to be treated as less than. I was showing him that family could hurt you repeatedly without consequence. That night, I made my decision. I would respond to the invoice, but not with a check for $200. My response would be both a boundary and a message, one that had been long overdue. The next morning, I withdrew a single crisp $1 bill from the bank. At home, I placed it in a pristine white envelope along with a note that simply read, "All I can afford." Nothing more needed to be said. I addressed the envelope to my parents, applied a stamp with more care than the gesture deserved, and dropped it in the mailbox before I could change my mind. 3 days later, my phone exploded with notifications. First came a text from my mother, "Is this some kind of joke? We expected better from you." Then my father called, leaving a voicemail when I didn't answer. "Your mother is very upset. This childish behavior is exactly why we've always worried about your maturity. Call us immediately to sort this out." Camden texted next, "Way to ruin my graduation celebration. Always making everything about you, aren't you?" I silenced my phone and went to pick up Oliver from school. We spent the afternoon at the park feeding ducks and talking about his day. This simple pleasure of being present for my child was what mattered. Not the artificial celebrations of achievements that came easily to someone who had every advantage. When we returned home, there were 6 more missed calls and a final text from my mother. "We've covered your portion of the costs. Don't bother coming to the graduation or reception. You're no longer welcome." I showed the messages to Ethan that evening after Oliver was in bed. "Are you okay?" he asked, genuine concern in his voice. To my surprise, I was. "Yes," I said. "For the first time in years, I feel clear. Like I've finally acknowledged what I've known all along. They don't value me or Oliver the way family should." "What are you going to do now?" I considered this. "Nothing. The ball is in their court. I'm done making excuses for them, done pretending that what they're doing isn't hurting Oliver." The next day, I received an unexpected call from my Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister. I had always liked Aunt Patricia. She had a warmth my mother lacked, and had made efforts over the years to maintain a relationship with me despite living across the country. "Zephira dear, I heard about the situation with Camden's graduation party," she began cautiously. I braced myself for a lecture about family loyalty. "Did my mother call you?" "She did, but that's not why I'm calling. I wanted to hear your side. Eleanor can be selective in how she presents things. So I told her everything, not just about the invoice and my response, but about years of favoritism, about Oliver's birthday party, about the countless small rejections that had accumulated into an unbearable weight. When I finished, there was silence on the line. Then Aunt Patricia sighed. I wish I could say I'm surprised, but I'm not. Eleanor has always had a blind spot when it comes to Camden. I've noticed it over the years, but I had no idea it had gotten this bad. I've tried to accommodate it, Aunt Patricia. I really have. But I can't let Oliver grow up thinking this is what he deserves from family. You're absolutely right, she said firmly. And for what it's worth, I think your $1 response was restrained considering the circumstances. Then she told me something that shifted my perspective entirely. You should know that none of the other family members received an invoice. Your cousins were asked to contribute what they could toward a group gift with a suggested amount of $50 each. Nothing about venue costs or catering contributions. I felt a fresh wave of anger. So I was the only one asked to pay $200. It appears so. And I think you need to know something else. The venue for the reception, it's being held at the country club, which your parents don't pay to rent because they're members. And the catering is largely covered by your father's firm. They're using it as a networking opportunity with Camden's law school connections. This revelation was stunning, not just the lie about everyone contributing equally, but the calculated attempt to extract money from me for expenses that weren't even real. It wasn't just favoritism anymore. It was outright deception. Thank you for telling me this, I said finally. One more thing, Aunt Patricia added. I'm not attending the graduation. I've sent Camden a gift and my congratulations, but I've told Eleanor that I don't approve of how she's handling this situation. You're not alone, Zephra. After our call ended, I sat in my quiet house processing this new information. My family's betrayal ran deeper than I had imagined. They hadn't just dismissed Oliver's birthday and demanded an exorbitant sum from me. They had singled me out for financial exploitation while lying about it to other family members. That evening, I received an email from my father. The subject line read, "Family expectations," and the message was cold and lawyerly. Your behavior has caused significant distress to your mother and brother. As I'm sure you're aware, family relationships come with certain obligations and expectations. Your refusal to contribute to Camden's celebration demonstrates a concerning lack of commitment to this family. We have decided it would be best for everyone if you take some time to reconsider your priorities. Until then, we think it wise to limit our interactions. I stared at the screen, reading and rereading the message. After they had ignored Oliver, lied about expenses, and attempted to extort money from me, they were positioning themselves as the injured parties. Hey everyone, I can see you're really engaged with this family drama. If you've ever had to stand up to toxic family members, drop a "gah" in the comments. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more stories like this one. The next part gets even more intense as I discover something shocking about my family's finances. Stay tuned to find out what happens next. 2 weeks after sending the $1 bill, I was working on a freelance article about financial fraud when my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but the area code was from my parents' neighborhood. "Hello," I answered cautiously. "Zephra, it's Margaret Dawson from your parents' neighborhood association. We met at that Christmas party years ago." I vaguely remembered Margaret, a friendly woman in her 60s who had complimented my journalism work when most of my parents' friends ignored my career. "Yes, of course. How are you, Margaret?" "I'm well, dear, but I'm calling about something sensitive." She lowered her voice. "I'm on the financial committee for the neighborhood association, and there's been an issue with your parents' dues. Normally I wouldn't discuss this with anyone else, but your father listed you as an emergency contact when they updated their paperwork last year." This was surprising news. What's the problem? Their account is severely delinquent, almost $6,000 behind. We've sent multiple notices but they haven't responded. The committee is considering placing a lien on their property. I was stunned. My parents, both successful attorneys with a sprawling colonial house and luxury cars behind on neighborhood dues. There must be some mistake, I said. My parents are. Well, they're very financially comfortable. That's what makes this so unusual, Margaret agreed. We've had other members face hardships, especially during economic downturns, but your parents have never communicated any difficulties. It's quite out of character. After promising to mention it to them, a promise I wasn't sure how I would keep, given our current estrangement, I thanked Margaret and ended the call. Something didn't add up. My parents had always flaunted their financial success, using it as evidence of their superior life choices compared to mine. The idea that they might be struggling financially seemed impossible, unless their outward display of wealth was just that, a display. My journalistic instincts kicked in. I opened my laptop and began searching public records. Property tax assessments, real estate transactions, business registrations, anything that might provide insight into my parents' financial situation. What I discovered was shocking. Their home had a second mortgage taken out 3 years ago. Their law firm, once prominent in Boston legal circles, had downsized significantly, moving from prestigious downtown offices to a smaller space in a less fashionable area. And there were tax liens filed against their property within the last year. Most revealing was a bankruptcy filing for a Blackwood Investment Group, a company registered to my father with Camden listed as a co-owner. The filing revealed catastrophic losses from a real estate venture that had collapsed dramatically. The timing aligned perfectly with their increased demands for me to contribute to family events and with the escalation in their lavish spending on Camden. They weren't just playing favorites, they were desperately trying to maintain an illusion of prosperity while their actual finances crumbled. I dug deeper, finding court records of a malpractice suit against my father that had been settled the previous year. The details were sealed, but the coincidence of the settlement with their financial troubles suggested it had been costly. A social media search revealed more clues. My mother's posts showing expensive dinners and luxury purchases were all at venues where they had long-standing connections or memberships, places where they could maintain appearances without significant new expenditure. Camden's European backpacking trip, which they had supposedly funded entirely, had actually been a budget affair, according to his own posts, with hostels and discount travel, rather than the luxury experience my mother had described to family and friends. The graduation party itself, the one for which I had been invoiced $200, was being held at their country club where they had been members for decades. As Aunt Patricia had revealed, there would be minimal rental fees due to their membership. The catering was indeed partially sponsored by my father's firm despite their downsizing. It was all a facade. The expensive gifts for Camden, the lavish parties, the outward display of success, all of it designed to hide their financial reality. I closed my laptop feeling an unexpected mix of emotions. There was vindication in discovering that their financial demands weren't just about favoritism, but about actual need. There was anger that they had tried to exploit me rather than being honest. And there was a strange, sad empathy for parents so trapped in appearances that they would alienate a daughter rather than admit vulnerability. The next day I received another call, this time from a former colleague of my father's. "Zephyra, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I got your number from the alumni directory," he began. "I wanted to check if your parents are okay. I've been worried about Richard since the firm downsized." "What exactly happened at the firm?" I asked, seizing the opportunity to learn more. He hesitated. "I'm not sure how much you know." "Very little," I admitted. "My parents and I aren't in frequent contact." "Well, I probably shouldn't say too much, but the malpractice suit hit them hard. Richard made some errors in judgment on a high-profile case. The partners asked him to step back from lead counsel positions. It was a significant demotion, both in status and compensation. This explained so much: my father's increased bitterness, my mother's intensified focus on Camden's achievements as a distraction from their own failures. And Camden's involvement, I asked. I understand he's connected to some investment group with my father. Another pause. Camden convinced Richard to invest the firm's retirement payout in a real estate development. Several other partners invested too on Richard's recommendation. When the project collapsed, it created tension. Many felt Richard should have known better than to trust Camden's business acumen given his history. Camden's history of abandoned endeavors and poor decisions, reframed by my parents as finding himself had finally caught up with them all. The golden child had tarnished the family legacy, but instead of acknowledging this reality, my parents had doubled down on presenting him as successful. "Thank you for telling me this," I said. "I appreciate your concern." After ending the call, I sat in my home office, staring at the family photo on my desk, one taken years ago before Oliver was born, when I still believed that my relationship with my parents could improve. In the photo, we all smiled tensely, maintaining the appearance of a happy family for the camera. Appearances. Everything in my family had always been about appearances. I considered my options carefully. I could expose their financial troubles, forcing them to confront their deception. I could demand an apology for years of favoritism and the recent attempt to extract money from me under false pretenses. I could even offer financial help using their vulnerability as leverage to renegotiate our relationship. But none of those options felt right. This revelation wasn't a weapon to wield against them. It was information that helped me understand a painful family dynamic. Their financial struggles didn't excuse their behavior, but they contextualized it. I decided on a different approach, one that would acknowledge what I knew without using it to hurt them, while still maintaining the boundary I had established with my $1 response. I drafted a brief email to my parents. "I've become aware of some challenges the family has been facing. While this doesn't change how I feel about the way Oliver and I have been treated, I want you to know that I'm open to an honest conversation when you're ready. Real family support isn't measured in dollars or appearances, it's built on truth and mutual respect." I didn't mention specific financial details, allowing them the dignity of deciding how much to acknowledge. I offered a potential bridge without compromising my self-respect or my determination to protect Oliver from their conditional love. After sending the email, I felt a weight lift. For years I had carried the burden of being the family disappointment, the one who didn't measure up. Now I understood that my crime wasn't my choices or my parenting or my career, it was my refusal to participate in the elaborate illusion my parents had constructed. My phone rang that evening. It was Camden. "I can't believe you're using Mom and Dad's problems to try to get back into their good graces," he said without preamble, his voice tight with anger. "Just because they're having a temporary financial setback doesn't mean you can waltz back in and act like you care about this family." "That's not what I'm doing, Camden," I replied calmly. "I genuinely want to help if I can, but only if we can be honest with each other." "They don't need your help," he snapped. "And they certainly don't need your judgment. We're doing fine. The graduation party is going to be perfect with or without your pathetic dollar." His defensive reaction confirmed everything I had discovered. The family narrative was so important to maintain that even concrete evidence of financial trouble couldn't penetrate it. "Camden," I said softly, "why has it always been a competition between us? I never wanted to compete with you for our parents' love." There was a long silence. When he spoke again, his voice had lost some of its edge. "You don't understand the pressure. You left. You built your own life. I'm the one who stayed, the one who has to live up to their expectations every day." For the first time, I glimpsed the burden my brother carried as the golden child. The golden cage was just as confining as my black sheep pen. Camden's unexpected moment of vulnerability stayed with me over the next few days. It was the first time in our adult lives that he had spoken to me without the protective armor of our parents' favoritism. That brief glimpse behind his facade made me wonder how much of his behavior was driven by his own insecurities rather than genuine malice. Still, his momentary honesty didn't erase years of emotional damage, nor did it absolve my parents of their responsibility for creating our dysfunctional family dynamic. As Camden's graduation day approached, I remained firm in my decision not to attend the celebration, though my reasons had evolved. This wasn't just about standing my ground against financial exploitation. It was about refusing to participate in the family's collective delusion. 3 days before the graduation, I received a formal email from my mother. The tone was coldly professional, as if addressing a difficult client rather than her daughter. After consideration, we've decided that your presence at Camden's graduation ceremony would create unnecessary tension. We request that you respect our wishes and refrain from attending. If you have a graduation gift for your brother, please send it directly to our home address. I hadn't planned to attend anyway, but their preemptive uninviting stung nonetheless. The message confirmed what I already knew in their narrative. I was the problem, not their favoritism, not their financial deception, not their consistent neglect of Oliver. That same evening, Ethan returned home from work with an unexpected proposal. "I think we should take Oliver to Disney World next weekend," he suggested over dinner. "It coincides with Camden's graduation, and I think it would be good for all of us to be somewhere joyful, creating positive memories, rather than dwelling on your family's drama." Oliver's eyes widened with excitement. "Really, Disney World? Can we go on Space Mountain?" I smiled at my son's enthusiasm. "That's a wonderful idea," I agreed. The thought of celebrating life with the people who genuinely loved me, rather than fighting for scraps of affection from those who didn't, was powerfully appealing. We booked the trip that night. I posted nothing about our plans on social media, not wanting to appear retaliatory. This wasn't about showing my family what they were missing. It was about prioritizing happiness over hurt. The morning of Camden's graduation, as we prepared to leave for the airport, my phone rang. It was my father, the first time he had called directly since the $1 incident. "Zafira," he began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "I'm calling about the graduation. I received Mom's email," I said. "I understand I'm not welcome. I wasn't planning to attend anyway. That's not why I'm calling." He cleared his throat. "There's been a development. The ceremony is proceeding, but the reception afterward has been modified." Something in his tone made me pause. "Modified how?" "The country club had a payment issue with our deposit." His voice dropped almost to a whisper. "The reception has been moved to a restaurant with a private room. More modest accommodations." The facade was cracking. My father, always so proud, so certain of his position in the world, was admitting, however obliquely, to financial constraints. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "I'm sure it will still be a lovely celebration." "Yes, well." He paused again. "Your mother thought perhaps you might reconsider attending. Family appearances and all that." And there it was, the true purpose of his call. Not reconciliation, not genuine connection, but preservation of appearances. They needed bodies in seats at the scaled-down reception to maintain the illusion of family solidarity. "I'm afraid we already have plans," I replied. "We're taking Oliver to Disney World. It's been planned for some time." This was a small lie, but a necessary one. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of knowing we had deliberately scheduled an alternative to Camden's celebration. "Disney World." His tone sharpened. "That must be quite expensive. I'm surprised you can afford such an extravagance when you claimed you could only contribute $1 to your brother's celebration." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. "We prioritize experiences with Oliver," I said simply. "We save for what matters to us." "I see." His voice was cold again. "Well, enjoy your trip. I'm sure Camden will understand your absence." After ending the call, I turned to find Ethan standing in the doorway, our suitcases ready beside him. The concern on his face told me he had overheard at least part of the conversation. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yes," I said, surprised to find I meant it. "Everything is exactly as it should be." Our weekend at Disney World was magical in every sense. Watching Oliver experience the wonder of the park, his face alight with joy as he met his favorite characters and braved his first roller coasters, I felt more certain than ever that I had made the right choice. This was what family should be: present, supportive, celebrating each other's happiness. On Saturday evening, as Oliver excitedly recounted his adventures to Ethan's parents via video call, my phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Patricia. "Thought you should know, reception was moved to Maggiano's at the last minute. Only about 30 people showed up, mostly colleagues required to attend." Camden looked miserable. "Your parents are putting on brave faces, but it's clear something's wrong. Hope you're somewhere wonderful." I sent her a quick photo of Oliver in Mickey ears grinning broadly. "We are," I replied. "Thanks for keeping me updated." That night, scrolling through my social media before bed, I noticed my mother had posted about Camden's graduation. The carefully worded caption mentioned the intimate celebration with closest family and colleagues, and included just 3 photos, all taken at the ceremony itself, none from the reception. The illusion was still being maintained, but the cracks were becoming more visible. Upon our return home, I found a letter in our mailbox. The handwriting on the envelope was unfamiliar, but the return address was from my parents' neighborhood. Inside was a brief note from Margaret Dawson. "Dear Zafira, I wanted to let you know that your parents have settled their neighborhood dues in full. I'm not sure what prompted this sudden payment after months of notices, but I thought you might like to know. Best wishes, Margaret." I wondered what they had sacrificed to make that payment. Had they sold something, borrowed money, or had my awareness of their financial struggles frightened them into prioritizing this particular debt to maintain neighborhood standing? 2 days later, I received an unexpected email from Camden. The subject line was simply "Thank you," and the message was brief. "Zeph, Dad told me you weren't at graduation because you took Oliver to Disney. Probably more fun than my boring ceremony anyway. Thanks for the graduation gift. I wasn't expecting anything from you after everything that happened." See, I stared at the screen, confused. I hadn't sent Camden a graduation gift. I had considered a card, but decided against even that small gesture given our recent interactions. I replied immediately, "Camden, I didn't send a gift." "What did you receive?" His response came an hour later, a check for $2,000, with a card saying it was from you to help with my bar exam prep course. Mom gave it to me at the reception. The pieces clicked into place with stunning clarity. My parents, unable to fund Camden's post-graduation expenses, as promised, had presented money as if it were from me. They had maintained their image as generous parents, while setting me up to disappoint Camden when he tried to cash a check that didn't exist. I called Camden immediately. For once he answered. "The check isn't from me," I said without preamble. "I never sent it." Silence stretched between us. Then I had a feeling. His voice was quiet. It seemed off. Especially after the dollar thing. "Mom and Dad gave it to you," I pressed. "Mom did. Said you'd mailed it to them to include with their gift since you couldn't attend." He sighed heavily. "I haven't tried to cash it yet." Something felt wrong. "Camden," I said carefully, "I think we need to talk. Not about the check, but about Mom and Dad and what's really been going on." More silence. Then surprisingly, "Yeah. Maybe we do." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our homes the following Saturday. This conversation was long overdue, and while I had no illusions that one talk would repair decades of damage, it was a start, a small step toward honesty in a family built on illusions. The coffee shop was busy when I arrived, but I spotted Camden immediately. He looked different, somehow less polished than usual, without the confident swagger he typically projected. He had chosen a corner table away from other patrons and was nervously shredding a napkin. "Hey," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Thanks for meeting me." He nodded, avoiding eye contact. "I brought the check," he said, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket. "I figured you should have it back since it wasn't really from you." I took the envelope and opened it. Inside was a check for $2,000 made out to Camden, with my forged signature at the bottom. The handwriting was unmistakably my mother's. She hadn't even tried to disguise it. "Did you talk to Mom about this?" I asked, returning the check to the envelope. Camden shook his head. "Not directly. I tried to bring it up, but she changed the subject. Dad got really quiet when I mentioned thanking you for your generosity. That's when I knew something was off." I took a deep breath. "Camden, how much do you know about Mom and Dad's financial situation?" His eyes darted up to meet mine, then away again. "What do you mean?" "The second mortgage on their house, the downsizing of the firm, the tax liens, the bankruptcy filing for Blackwood Investment Group." Color drained from his face. "How do you know about all that?" "I'm a journalist, Camden. I know how to research public records." I kept my tone gentle, not wanting this to sound like an accusation. "But more importantly, why didn't you tell me? This affects both of us." He stared into his coffee cup. "I didn't think you'd care," he admitted finally. "We're not exactly close. And to be honest, I'm ashamed. The investment group was my idea. I convinced Dad to put everything into that development project. When it collapsed," he trailed off, swallowing hard. "Is that why they're so fixated on your law school graduation, on presenting you as successful?" "Probably." He ran a hand through his hair. "Dad's reputation at the firm never recovered after the investment disaster. Most of his colleagues lost money too. Mom's been obsessed with appearances ever since, making sure everyone knows I'm a success story, that the Blackwood name still means something. And the $2,200 they tried to get from me for your graduation party," Camden looked genuinely surprised. $2,200, they asked you for that much?" "The party was scaled down to practically nothing. The country club canceled our reservation when their credit card was declined. We ended up at Maggiano's, and half the people didn't show up." Each revelation confirmed what I had pieced together, but hearing it directly from Camden was still shocking. Our parents had been living in a house of financial cards for years, maintaining an illusion of prosperity, while reality crumbled around them. Why didn't they just tell me? I asked, more to myself than to Camden. If they needed help, I would have helped, not with $2,200, but something reasonable. They didn't have to lie. Camden looked at me directly for the first time. "Would you have, though, after how they've treated you, after how they've ignored Oliver?" It was a fair question. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I deserved the chance to make that choice based on truth, not manipulation." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our family's dysfunction settling between us. "I'm sorry," Camden said finally. "About Oliver's birthday party. I didn't know they had promised to go. Mom just said we were celebrating my interview, which wasn't even real. It was just dinner with some law school friends who had connections." "It's not your fault," I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. "You didn't create the dynamic. Mom and Dad did." Still, he fidgeted with his coffee cup. "I should have been a better uncle. A better brother." I nodded, accepting his apology without absolving him completely. "What are you going to do now?" "About the check, about everything, I don't know." He looked lost, younger than his years. "I'm supposed to start bar prep next month, but I can't afford the course without their help. My student loans are." He shook his head. "Let's just say law school wasn't a financially prudent decision." "What do you actually want to do, Camden? If you could choose anything without Mom and Dad's expectations?" He blinked, seemingly startled by the question. "No one's ever asked me that before." He thought for a moment. "I've always liked teaching, actually. Working with kids. I volunteered at a youth center during undergrad, and really enjoyed it. This was a side of Camden I'd never seen, or perhaps never looked for. Beneath the golden child facade was a person with his own dreams trapped in a role that had been assigned rather than chosen. Maybe you should explore that, I suggested. Teaching requires the bar exam too, right? Legal studies for high school or pre-law courses. A small smile appeared. Yeah, it does. That's not a bad idea. Our conversation continued for nearly 2 hours. We talked about our childhood, about the pressure Camden felt as the designated success story, about my resentment over years of being the family afterthought. We didn't resolve everything. Decades of complex family dynamics couldn't be untangled in one coffee shop meeting, but we established something new: honest communication. Before we parted, I made a decision. The bar prep course, I said. How much does it cost? Around $2,000, he admitted. Ironic, right? The exact amount of the fake check. I took out my checkbook and wrote a check for $1,000. This is what I can actually afford, I said, handing it to him. No strings attached except one: you have to be honest with mom and dad about where it came from. No more illusions. Camden stared at the check, then back at me. Why would you do this, after everything? Because breaking the cycle starts with one of us, I said simply. And because I think there's a version of you beyond the golden child role that I'd like to get to know. Maybe an uncle that Oliver could actually have a relationship with. 2 weeks later, I received a text from Camden. Told mom and dad about our talk. Cashed your real check. Starting bar prep next week. Dad cried. Never seen that before. Mom's still in denial. Small steps. Thank you. It wasn't a Hollywood ending with tearful reconciliations and instantly healed relationships. My parents didn't suddenly acknowledge their favoritism or financial deception. They didn't become the grandparents Oliver deserved overnight. But a crack had appeared in the facade, a small opening for truth to enter our family narrative. Over the following months, Camden began visiting us occasionally. His interactions with Oliver were awkward at first, but gradually warmed as they discovered shared interests in astronomy and baseball. My parents remained distant, still unwilling or unable to confront the reality of their behavior, but the stranglehold they had maintained over our family dynamic was loosening. As for me, I found unexpected peace in releasing expectations of what my relationship with my parents should be. I accepted the reality of who they were, flawed people trapped in their own illusions of success and status, without allowing their limitations to define my worth or happiness. On Oliver's 9th birthday, we had another space-themed party. Camden attended, bringing a telescope as a gift. My parents sent a card with a gift certificate, not present physically, but acknowledging the day in a way they never had before. It was a small gesture, perhaps motivated more by fear of losing face with Camden than by genuine change of heart, but it was something. When Oliver opened their card, he looked at me questioningly. Are Grandma and Grandpa still too busy to come to my parties? Yes, I answered honestly. But that's about them, not about you. Some people don't know how to show love well. It doesn't mean you're not worthy of love. He considered this, then nodded. That's okay. I have you and Dad and Uncle Camden and Grandma and Grandpa Wilson. He grinned. And now I have a real telescope. As I watched him run off to show his friends his new gift, I reflected on the journey of the past year. From the ignored birthday party to the $2,200 demand, to the $1 response that changed everything, each step had led to this moment of clarity and cautious hope. The family that had once seemed immutable, fixed in roles of golden child and black sheep, of givers and takers of approval, was slowly, painfully transforming. The transformation wasn't perfect or complete, but it was real. Sometimes, standing up for yourself with a single dollar can be worth more than paying thousands to maintain an illusion. Sometimes the family you choose and the boundaries you set with the family you were born into are the most valuable investments you can make. Hey everyone, what an incredible journey this has been sharing my family's story with you all. If you've experienced similar family dynamics or had to stand up for yourself against unfair treatment, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. How did you handle toxic family situations? What boundaries did you set? Your stories help others feel less alone in these struggles. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. It helps more people find these real-life lessons about family karma and standing up for what's right. Share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to send that metaphorical $1 response to toxic expectations. Thank you so much for watching until the end. Remember that sometimes the most important family lessons come from knowing when to break unhealthy patterns. Until next time, take care of yourselves and your boundaries.